Disney's Snow White has been a box office disaster.
Let's address the elephant in the room.
But listen here as the star, Rachel Zegler, does a massive backflip.
There are messages in both films that everyone needs to hear. It's timeless. That's what makes it a classic.
She's gone from bagging the original story to saying it's an example to admire.
I don't need your business.
You know what? Maybe Disney does.
Rachel Zegler hurt the film's box office with her actions.
I'm off the deep end. That's my party trick.
I think you're a piece of crap.
She has been sabotaging this film for years at this point.
I think it's a very human thing to not always see the bright side.
And she's in fact going to be a girl boss feminist who don't need no man.
Weird. There is a message that's been carried on for almost 90 years now from the original animated classic.
Let's check in with the star of the movie, Rachel Zegler, being totally normal here.
Disney's worst investment ever in the history of Disney investments.
In a desperate attempt to salvage both her reputation and the film, Rachel made a complete 180 on her earlier statements.
But that is part of the beauty of Snow White. It has been for 88 years now that she just sees the good in everyone and everything.
Out of nowhere, she started raving about the significance of the prince and the classic love story, something she had previously dismissed.
I had a song for Snow White and Jonathan, like for the love story. It was Cowboy Like Me. So I would love to tell the folks at home, I would love that.
Insiders suggest Disney executives strongly encouraged her to publicly backtrack, hoping to quell the outrage and rebrand Snow White as a timeless romance once more.
There's a lot of responsibility there, and so you have to take excellent care of the classic versions of these stories that people care so deeply about.
But rather than sounding heartfelt, her sudden enthusiasm came off forced and insincere.
But also just the values of Snow White, the kindness, her beauty, the way she treats wildlife and all of the people that she meets. It's a timeless concept. And I think that's why it continues to mean so much to people.
Fans called it out as yet another scripted performance, and social media latched onto every awkward interview clip. Rachel's about face did little to quiet the critics, who saw the abrupt shift as just another example of Disney's relentless PR machine in action.
160-something thousand reviews with a 1.6 stars. Absolutely embarrassing.
Disney, their big blockbuster movie has plummeted, much like the Democratic approval ratings that reached, I think, an all-time low at, 27%?
How exactly did Disney manage to ruin their beloved classics and tank their reputation simultaneously? 2 words, Rachel Zegler. Disney thought bringing in the woke generation would mean profits, applause, and endless pats on the back, but instead, they got controversy, cringe, and collapsing box office numbers.
We have a really important presidential election coming up. Vote for Kamala Harris.
You actually don't want to know what celebrities think politically.
It turns out that when you prioritize ticking off progressive checkboxes over crafting a genuinely engaging story, you end up alienating the very fans who made you an icon in the first place. Rachel quickly became internet famous, but probably not in the way she planned.
The cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power.
Her interviews criticizing the iconic love story in Snow White as outdated and labeling the prince a stalker went viral faster than Disney execs could say damage control.
You know, other movie companies are going to look at her and they're going to say box office poison. A lot of this is due to her behavior leading up to the film's release.
Absolutely. She is just uniquely unlikable.
Yes, Rachel, nothing says Disney magic like openly trashing the very character you're supposed to portray, who needs timeless romance when you've got snarky virtue signaling. Suddenly the narrative wasn't about celebrating a new Snow White, it was about turning a beloved fairy tale into another platform for moral preaching. Fans were outraged at what they saw as a lack of respect for Disney's treasured heritage, and they didn't hesitate to voice that displeasure on every corner of social media.
Because you just can't close your mouth. You just can't be sane. I think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film. She deserves to be in a padded cell.
You want to trash that legacy? That company that now Disney has screwed up the last 5 years trying to please a small percentage of minorities in America? Yeah, we're sick of it. So the more you do this, Disney, Iger, Rachel Zegler, whatever her name is, yes, this is exactly the backlash you're going to get from parents who have kids who are your customers. You're talking to kids, the parents pay for the tickets. If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting, because you just screwed this thing up.
Disney, never one to miss a misguided bandwagon, leapt headfirst into rewriting Snow White entirely. Gone was the traditional Prince Charming heroism, replaced by Rachel's dreams of political empowerment. After all, who doesn't go to Disney films hoping for a lecture on corporate feminism and woke ideology disguised as entertainment?
163,000 rating, 1.6 out of 10.
You've got to reject men. They have to be painted as toxically masculine. You have to spit on true love. Like, that is not a value that is universal.
By forsaking the very essence of the fairy tale, Disney managed to anger both die-hard Disney loyalists and casual viewers who simply wanted an uplifting story rather than a social commentary. It's a classic case of a major studio believing it's so invincible that it can ignore its core audience without consequence.
God forbid a woman dream about true love. We're all just sitting around here, oh, maybe I could be president one day. I hate men, I just want to be president.
Adding fuel to the dumpster fire, Rachel openly complained about being recognized at Disney parks. Imagine being cast as a Disney princess, paid millions, and then, horror of horrors, fans recognizing you at Disneyland.
Have you ever been to that Snow White ride?
I watched it once, and then I went on the ride in Disney World, which was called Snow White's Scary Adventures. Was terrified of it. Never revisited Snow White again.
Disneyland?
I get stopped for photos every time I'm online for the Snow White ride, and it is I have to pretend like, oh God, well, crazy that we're in front of this. Because every time they come up to me, I'm always online for this freaking ride, and they think it's like I'm standing there waiting for the photo op, being like,
wait, how often are you in line for the Snow White ride?
I'm a narcissist.
Poor Rachel, if only she could cash in her Disney paycheck to soothe the trauma of her fame-induced suffering. Her remarks came across as whiny and ungrateful, and unsurprisingly, they spread like wildfire across social media. Fans questioned why anyone with such a dismissive attitude toward Disney's own audience would even want to play a beloved fairy tale character.
You know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so.
Disney fans are offended by Rachel Zegler's comments.
Even Disney CEO Bob Iger admitted their diversity initiative was less about genuine inclusion and more about padding their pockets.
Talk about what we want to make. And I felt that it was time for Marvel's storytelling to much better reflect the world we were doing business in. I'm a big believer in that, whether you call it diversity or inclusion. But the bottom line is that doing so is good for commerce. It was good for commerce.
It turns out those heartfelt messages about representation were nothing more than a cunning strategy to exploit cultural trends and chase profits. Who knew corporate executives could be so cynical? Meanwhile, the carefully choreographed publicity stunts and press releases from Disney tried to paint the company as champions of progressive values. The disconnect between this crafted image and the cold, profit-driven reality made fans and even some Hollywood insiders roll their eyes.
You know, they say that numbers talk, BS walks. People are screaming, Disney, get it together. Who is the Disney's customer? You talk about this all the time, Pat. It's families and it's parents who are paying for their kids to go to movies or go to theme parks or buy products. And you have parents looking at Disney being like, what are you doing, guys? Like, this is supposed to be a place where magic happens. And all you're doing is indoctrinating kids, and you're having this person be the poster child of the Democratic Party. She is basically the AOC of Disney.
It's not just Disney. The entire Hollywood machine seems obsessed with virtue signaling over genuine storytelling. Actors now routinely use their platforms not to promote the films they're in, but to lecture audiences on politics, social justice, and trendy activism. Viewers, understandably, are growing tired of being treated like they need constant moral guidance from millionaires who often appear disconnected from everyday reality. Instead of leaving the theater or streaming platform feeling entertained or inspired, many feel preached to like they've just paid for a scolding instead of a good time. From awkward award show speeches to endless social media rants, Hollywood's heavy-handed wokeness is driving viewers away.
Leaning into woke, hardcore.
They're petrified of some kind of backlash.
And dealing with the frustration of reteaching people a word that has been in the human vocabulary since the dawn of time. They, them. Poetically, a person who is simply more.
These are raging narcissists. They believe that they are more than the rest of us, us normal people with our boring singular pronouns.
With shrinking box office receipts and struggling streaming platforms, the loudest voices in Hollywood might want to consider that people watch films for escapism and great storytelling, not an endless supply of sanctimonious lectures.
If you want to look at why the Democratic Party has reached all-time lows, look no further than what Disney is doing with their woke, DEI, feminist agenda.
Peter Dinklage complained about it, right? He whined on a podcast, and he's like the most famous, successful dwarf ever.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be if he was not a dwarf, saying, it makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story about 7 dwarfs living in a cave together. Have I done nothing to advance the cause from my soapbox? I guess I'm not loud enough.
Fans, tired of being preached to, fired back with a vengeance. Social media exploded into memes, TikToks, and scathing reviews that collectively roasted Disney's painfully obvious attempts at woke pandering. It was like watching a 100-year-old brand suddenly lose all connection to its roots. Disney seemed genuinely stunned that alienating lifelong fans wasn't exactly great for business. It's almost as if disrespecting your core audience might have consequences. Who would have guessed? It was a wave of discontent so large, even the normally impenetrable Disney marketing machine struggled to keep up.
She's also just a spoiled, entitled, narcissistic brat.
Rachel's awkward appearances on Jimmy Kimmel and other talk shows were supposed to smooth things over, but ended up making the situation worse. Watching Rachel stumble through scripted apologies while trying to sound authentic was almost as entertaining as watching Disney's stock price plummet. Almost. Instead of an earnest apology or a thoughtful explanation, viewers got more of the same self-righteous tone.
There's been so much buzz about this and about you. What's it like hearing people say all these really nice things?
It's very validating. A lot of hard work has gone into this film, but so much love.
Audiences cringed as PR spin replaced sincerity. It was as if Disney believed the public was too dim to notice the lack of genuine remorse. Needless to say, the damage continued to snowball. The entertainment giant, once regarded as bulletproof, was now scrambling to explain to investors why their surefire hits were transforming into embarrassing disappointments. Analysts on Wall Street started questioning Disney's strategic direction, pointing out that these repeated misfires weren't just anomalies, they were part of a trend. Behind closed doors, CEO Bob Iger openly criticized employees for valuing Disney's past successes, as if the people who created legendary icons like Simba and Cinderella had no clue about storytelling. Clearly, Iger thought he knew better, pushing a vision so innovative. Now whispers suggest Disney might actually return to traditional storytelling. Imagine that. Could it be genuine remorse or just another desperate attempt to win back an alienated audience? Given Disney's recent track record, it might just be the latter. Another calculated trick dressed up as humble regret. After all, backpedaling one's sales tank is a time-honored corporate maneuver. Executives are privately, some might say frantically, brainstorming ways to recapture the classic magic. And here lies the irony. Disney trashed its own legacy and mocked fans for loving traditional stories, only to find out those traditions were exactly what made them successful in the first place. Rachel Zegler and Disney's woke crusade didn't just damage their reputations, they nearly destroyed a century-old empire. Maybe next time they'll think twice before insulting the very audience that built their magical kingdom. Or perhaps they'll keep doubling down until there's nothing left to save. In the end, only time will tell if Disney can pick up the shattered pieces of its heritage and remember why audiences fell in love with the brand in the first place.